Everybody, I'm Dr. Greg Sloop, and it's time for Live at 5 on this Thursday, June 5th, 2025. Hope you're having an absolutely wonderful day. We are continuing our journey through the New Testament, and we are at day 112 out of 270. We are looking at Acts chapter 23 today. Acts 23. It's been good kind of seeing the chronicle of Paul's missionary journeys here in the latter half of the book of Acts. We're almost to the end of Acts, a few more chapters to go, but this has been quite an interesting trip. Paul went through a great deal. Paul accomplished a great deal, and Paul is one of the central figures in the New Testament, Jesus obviously being the most central figure, and then, of course, the disciples and Paul carried out that work of Christ, especially after the day of Pentecost and after Paul's conversion. Later in the book of Acts, Acts chapter 15, a watershed chapter we looked at not too long ago, the Jerusalem Council that decided that the Gentiles would only be responsible for a few things instead of observing the entire Jewish law. So all of this has brought us up to a place where Paul has now gone to Jerusalem against advice of his friends to observe Pentecost, or at least to get to Jerusalem and make himself known and to report back to the leaders of the church what had been happening among the Gentiles. And he got attacked. He was accused falsely. He was sent to Felix. Felix will interrogate him and talk to him on many occasions, and we'll see that story play out over the next few days. But for today, we want to talk about how he has been brought before the Sanhedrin. He has just finished talking to the Roman officials and now is addressing the Sanhedrin Council. Verse 1 of chapter 23 says, "Then Paul, looking earnestly at the council, said, 'Men and brethren, I have lived in all good conscience before God until this day.' And the high priest Ananias commanded those who stood by him to strike him on the mouth. Then Paul said to him, 'God will strike you, you whitewashed wall. For you sit to judge me according to the law, and do you command me to be struck contrary to the law?' And those who stood by said, 'Do you revile God's high priest?' Then Paul said, 'I did not know, brethren, that he was the high priest. For it is written, you shall not speak evil of a ruler of your people.' But when Paul perceived that one part were Sadducees and the other Pharisees, he cried out in the council, 'Men and brethren, I am a Pharisee, the son of a Pharisee. Concerning the hope and resurrection of the dead, I am being judged.'" Now, this took great wisdom. This was shrewd. We'll talk more about that in a little bit. Let's continue on in verse 7. "And when he had said this, a dissension arose between the Pharisees and the Sadducees, and the assembly was divided. For the Sadducees say that there is no resurrection and no angel or spirit, but the Pharisees confess both. Then there arose a loud outcry, and the scribes of the Pharisees' party arose and protested, saying, 'We find no evil in this man, but if a spirit or an angel has spoken to him, let us not fight against God.' Now, when there arose a great dissension, the commander, fearing lest Paul might be pulled to pieces by them, commanded the soldiers to go down and take him by force from among them and bring him into the barracks." So this is the very beginning. They were about to destroy him. He asked to speak to the Sanhedrin Council. The commander took him out, took him to the barracks to save his life. Paul was brought before the Sanhedrin. He defended his record. The high priest had one of his servants strike Paul on the mouth because I guess he thought Paul spoke out of turn somehow, and then Paul reviled him. And Paul said, "What is your problem? Why are you having me slapped in the mouth without cause?" And he was told who he was speaking to. It was Ananias, the high priest, and he apologized. He then declared, though, this divided the group. This divided the council because the council was made up of two camps, Sadducees and Pharisees. He declared that he was being persecuted because he believed in the resurrection. This divided the council because the Sadducees did not believe in a bodily resurrection. In the melee, the commander took Paul out of the mob for his own safety, and the plot against Paul continued. Verse 11, "But the following night the Lord stood by him and said, 'Be of good cheer, Paul, For as you have testified for me in Jerusalem, so you must also bear witness at Rome. And when it was day, some of the Jews banded together and bound themselves under an oath, saying that they would neither eat nor drink till they had killed Paul. Now there were more than 40 who had formed this conspiracy. They came to the chief priests and elders and said, "We have bound ourselves under a great oath that we will eat nothing until we have killed Paul. Now you, therefore, together with the council, suggest to the commander that he be brought down to you tomorrow again, as though you were going to make further inquiries concerning him, but we are ready to kill him before he comes near." So when Paul's sister's son, Paul's nephew, heard of their ambush, he went and entered the barracks and told Paul. Then Paul called one of the centurions to him and said, "Take this young man to the commander, for he has something to tell him." So he took him and brought him to the commander and said, "Paul the prisoner called me to him and asked me to bring this young man to you. He has something to say to you." Then the commander took him by the hand, went aside and asked privately, "What is it that you have to tell me?" And he said, "The Jews have agreed to ask that you bring Paul down to the council tomorrow, as though they were going to inquire about him further. But do not yield to them, for more than 40 of them lie in wait for him, men who have bound themselves by an oath that they will neither eat nor drink till they have killed him. Now they are ready, waiting for the promise from you." So here they were planning to kill Paul. They had everything planned out. They had asked for them to bring Paul down for more questioning. Verse 22, "So the commander let the young man depart and commanded him, 'Tell no one that you have revealed these things to me.'" Paul had a vision that he would go to Rome, that he would defend the faith in Rome. And a plot was hatched to kill Paul in transport to speak to the Jews again. Paul's nephew heard of the plot and he told the authorities, and the commander said, "Don't tell anybody." So then, in response to this danger, in response to this threat against Paul, the commander decided to send Paul to Felix, as I mentioned at the beginning of the day. Verse 23, "And he called for 2 centurions, saying, 'Prepare 200 soldiers, 70 horsemen, and 200 spearmen to go to Caesarea at the 3rd hour of the night,'" or at midnight. So there was 200 soldiers, 200 spearmen, that's 400 people, 70 horsemen, that's 470 people to take Paul to Caesarea, where Felix was headquartered, and provide mounts to set Paul on and bring him safely to Felix the governor. He wrote a letter in the following manner: "Claudius Lysias," who was the commander, "to the most excellent governor Felix, greetings. This man was seized by the Jews and was about to be killed by them. Coming with the troops, I rescued him, having learned that he was a Roman. And when I wanted to know the reason they accused him, I brought him before their council. I found out that he was accused concerning questions of their law, but had nothing charged against him deserving of death or chains. And when it was told me that the Jews lay in wait for the man, I sent him immediately to you, and also commanded his accusers to state before you the charges against him. Farewell." Then the soldiers, as they were commanded, took Paul and brought him by night to Antipatris. The next day they left the horsemen to go on with them and returned to the barracks. When they came to Caesarea and had delivered the letter to the governor, they also presented Paul to him. And when the governor had read it, he asked what province he was from, and when he understood that he was from Cilicia, he said, "I will hear you when your accusers also have come." And he commanded him to be kept in Herod's praetorium, his headquarters. That night, a huge group of soldiers, horsemen, spearmen, all of that, took Paul to Caesarea to stand before Felix the governor. Sent a letter along to explain the situation to Felix. And when Felix read the letter, he asked what province Paul was from and agreed to hear him when his accusers arrived. Paul was kept in Herod's praetorium, and this was the beginning of Paul's trek to Rome to declare Christ that God had just reminded him of, just prophesied in a vision to him. he would not return to many of the churches in Asia. His time as the missionary apostle was coming to an end in that area, but in Rome, where he would be going, was going to be a newfound opportunity, a new mission field for Paul to spread the gospel even in the headquarters of the Roman Empire. So this story has a lot of value to it. It has a lot of interest for us as Christians. And we need to understand that this was also one of those watershed moments. His eye was set. You're going to hear in the next chapter or two that he appeals to Caesar because he knows that's the only way not to be found guilty in the lower court, with the Jews lying about him. It's an interesting story. We're going to continue it tomorrow. Tomorrow will be Friday. We'll be here tomorrow for our final Live at 5 of this week before Sunday. Sunday we'll start fresh with a Psalm 119 passage that we're going to read and talk about and pray through. We love doing that on Sundays as well. And we'll look forward to seeing you guys tomorrow. Spend time with God tomorrow, every day, in the Word of God and prayer. Read the Word, pray, and listen for God to speak back. And it'll start your day great. It'll be the absolute most important and best thing you can do all day long. Please know we're praying for you. Good to see Richard Britt and Kiza Ronald and then Ken Woodard on here today. I know a lot of our folks are involved in VBS, which is cranking up in about 4 minutes with dinner, and then we'll have our final classes and services tonight. I'm teaching the adult Bible study tonight that starts at 6:30. If you're in the area, drop by. If not, we'll look forward to seeing each of you again tomorrow, live at 5.